In the wake of violent clashes between protesters and police in Sainte-Soline over a proposed agricultural irrigation pond, demonstrators in Paris took to the streets to denounce police brutality and demand justice for the injured activists. On the day of the protest, angry crowds gathered in front of Paris City Hall, holding signs and chanting slogans denouncing police violence. The protesters were demanding accountability for the use of force against activists in Sainte-Soline, where several people were injured during a demonstration against the proposed irrigation pond. Reports from the scene suggest that the protests started peacefully, but tensions quickly escalated as police forces began to intervene. Scuffles broke out between police and protesters, with some individuals throwing projectiles and setting off smoke bombs. Despite the violence, the protesters remained defiant, continuing to demand justice for those injured in Sainte-Soline. Some activists gave speeches, calling for an end to police brutality and urging the government to take action to address the underlying issues that led to the clashes. The demonstration in Paris is just the latest in a series of protests and civil unrest that have swept France in recent years. From the Yellow Vest movement to protests against police violence and racial discrimination, the country has seen a wave of social unrest that has brought thousands of people into the streets. Many observers have pointed to a growing sense of dissatisfaction with the government and its policies as a major driver of the unrest. Economic inequality, racial discrimination, and a perceived lack of accountability for police violence are just some of the issues that have fueled the protests. In the case of the protests in Sainte-Soline, activists are calling for the government to scrap plans for the proposed irrigation pond, which they say will harm the environment and displace local residents. They are also calling for justice for those injured during the clashes with police. The situation in France remains tense, with many calling for greater transparency and accountability from the government and law enforcement agencies. The protests in Paris are a reminder of the power of collective action and the importance of speaking out against injustice, even in the face of violence and repression.